you. And hopefully everybody can hear me and see me okay. And if not, just let me know and I'll see if I can make an adjustment for you. But I think we're okay. So thanks for having me. Thank you for the opportunity and for giving me some of your time this afternoon. Thank you for putting me in an uncomfortable situation. You know, I do a lot of these, but inevitably I always get a little bit nervous about them. So I do apologize if that comes out a little bit, but I'll appreciate it later. I always do. So thank you again. My name's Ryan Leland. I'm 37 years old. I live in Idaho Falls, and I'm the CIO for Bank of Idaho. And what that means is that I manage information technology for Bank of Idaho. There's quite a lot that goes into it, but for the purposes of our talk, that's it. I've been with Bank of Idaho for about 5 years now, but unbelievably, my career in IT is going on about 22 years. And if you do that math, you might raise a little bit of an eyebrow, but that's the truth, and we'll get there. My career path has been exclusively in information technology, but I do have interests outside of IT. Information technology is my profession, but it's not my whole life. I'm a husband, and my wife and I have been together for 17 years. I'm a father. I have 7-year-old twins, and my oldest son is 12. My family's my greatest joy in my life. I'm an aspiring endurance athlete. I'm a runner. I run a marathon a week, and I've been doing that for about 22 months now. So I run for fun, and that probably sounds ridiculous, and well, that's because it is ridiculous. And just ask my wife; she'll be happy to tell you how ridiculous I am about it. I take long distance, multi-day backpacking trips in the mountains. I like to get way, way out there, talk to myself for a few days. It seems to help. I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, I'm a 3-stripe white belt. So watch out. My kids, they do it too. And they've got more stripes than I do, but they're much smaller than I am, so they don't stand a chance. But beyond that, I'm really kind of a painfully regular guy, I guess. I'm kind of quiet, probably kind of a dork, not much of a social life. So, maybe I'm more of a typical IT guy than I first let on, but that's okay. I'm happy with my life. I love myself, and if you can just reach one person, okay, enough. But really, I'd like to share with you a short story. Be forewarned, this will probably be way more entertaining for me than it will be for you, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. So seriously though, there's a few ideas that I want you to take away from my story today. And I'll share these ideas with you up front so that you can be cognizant of them as we talk. And the first idea I want to share with you is that the path is not always clear. And you're going to hear a little bit about how my path was not the cookie cutter prescribed path that we all might expect to be laid out for us. It's much more likely that your path is going to be filled with twists, turns, stumbles, pivots, sprints, leaps, so on and so forth. But the truth is, that's what's normal. It would be pretty unusual if we all got where we wanted to go by following the same path. The second idea is that specialization is for insects, not for people. You've got your talents and you've got your interests, but really you have no idea what you're capable of unless you open yourself to new ideas and new challenges. And so if you're too specialized, unbelievable opportunities could pass you by. So be careful of specializing too much. And the last idea is own everything in your world. Successes, failures, achievements, mistakes, your body, your mindset, your environment, your foresight, your surprises, the unknown, everything. Own it all. There's external factors and influences everywhere, but this is your life and your world, and ultimately you're in control of it. So I'd like to start my story just right at the very beginning. I was born and raised in the Portland metro area, but really Southwest Washington, right across the bridge in Vancouver, Washington. I grew up somewhere on the border between a rural and suburban neighborhood. It was quiet and safe, and lots of space and lots of freedom for a kid. I had a lower medium class upbringing. We didn't have a lot, but we had a little more than enough. I was a happy kid. We were a happy family, and we were all very, very close. I grew up in a great school district. but I didn't always do so well in public school. From very early on, I was one who absorbed information quickly. But then I became bored with the subject matter and just kind of wanted to move on. I was a great test taker, but I never was really interested in the work. I was that kind of kid. Maybe some of you can relate. But that persisted to high school, and I did very, very poorly my freshman and sophomore years. And frankly, things were looking kind of bleak, and my parents were very concerned. Um, they tried to help, but I just wasn't interested. I did what I wanted, and I didn't do what I didn't want. And so I was intent on doing my own things and living my own life. And to the extent that I moved out at 16 years old, and I moved myself to a new high school, and it wasn't my intent. But after that move, I maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout my junior and senior years. And it just turns out that for me, there were a few things that I didn't know I really, really needed. I had to change my environment. To this day, I don't know why, but it was just apparently a necessity for me. I had to rid myself of all my distractions, my friends, my enemies, my poor academic history, and so on and so forth. But and it's all kind of juvenile saying it out loud today, but that was the reality then. I had to remove myself from my bad priorities. So backing up a little bit, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where personal computers and technology were around and were a part of our life. My mother was a business analyst for a global insurance company, and the business of insurance was quickly becoming digital at the time. My father had a little bit of interest in computing and technology, but more importantly, he had a really strong work ethic, and almost to the point of it being a fault. So we had personal computers and peripherals and internet around our home long before it was ubiquitous. And my interest started at around just 10 years old, where I was just fascinated by the picture box that I could make do things, and not even cool things, but just things. This was back in the days of DOS, the dark days of DOS. It was all command line. And so, but I learned touch typing at a very, very young age. And I just do silly things like look around the file system and try to make sense out of all the files and what they were for and why they were there. And I'd ask my parents a lot of questions, but they usually didn't have any answers. They didn't know, they didn't care. It was to them, it was just a tool, and it was just kind of a novelty. And so, but I was never really into computer games or any games. Really, that wasn't my thing. I'd play with them a little bit, but I was more interested in the other things that a computer could do. And by age 12, I became very interested in communicating with others, with other people on my computer. And back then, we didn't have social media, we didn't have chat rooms, we didn't have Twitter or Reddit or Facebook or any of those things. What we had were called BBSs, or bulletin board systems. And you would dial into a modem bank with 20 or so other users, and these were all people who were local and lived nearby, and we had things to talk about and common interests and what have you. But you had some rudimentary email and some chat, and but it was all text based, and there was no graphics and no browsers, and it was just maybe a little font color and some ASCII art if you were lucky. But what was really cool to me was software sharing. And this was before the days of DRM, and before anybody really cared about copyrighted software, before that was really an issue. And it probably still wasn't necessarily okay, but we didn't know any better, and we were having fun. So there were some text-based games out there or whatever, but really it was the interaction with others that captivated me. And you might think to yourself, well, that kind of environment's probably no place for a 12-year-old, and you'd probably be right. But I was fortunate enough that there was never any kind of unsavory characters around or anything like that. I mostly kept private anyway. So I was kind of a geek at a very young age, and borderline nerdy even. Uh, and that it being somewhat a rural community, there really wasn't a large membership for this kind of thing amongst my peers. But there were just enough of us that I guess I had a sense of belonging, right? Suffice to say, I wasn't a popular kid, but I had my little circle. So fast forward about 3 years, and my career in IT started at just 15 years old while I was working summers at a food production and processing plant in Portland, Oregon. And at the time, you could work seasonally at age 15 and a half in Oregon. I had no idea if this is still a thing, probably not, but it was then. And my parents' strong work ethic, it led them to push me in that direction. So I worked summers for this company, and I ran a scales system. And scales, I mean weights and measurements. And so bins full of produce would be set down on these scales by a forklift, and I'd record their size and rating and their weight, and the forklift would haul them off for processing. And then there was a little bit more to it than that, but not much. And this is what I did all day long for long hours, and it was very monotonous, but maybe not as bad as standing on the sorting line all day and sorting out rot and such. So I appreciated it, and I felt like it was an important job. And after all, I was the only one assigned to do it, so they needed me. Uh, and how naive I was to think that. But during breaks and during my lunch hour, I'd wander into administrative offices because, well, they had computers in there, and so I'd wander into the office space, and I'd come in and I'd ask a lot of questions, and an office worker would entertain me and entertain my curiosity, and started talking to me eventually about a failed piece of software for a product labeling and tracking system that they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And I asked if they could show me, and they couldn't make it work. So they showed it to me, and I spent all of my breaks and my lunch hours coming in and sitting down and looking at it and trying to make sense out of it and what it was supposed to do and why it wasn't doing it. And eventually, and after enough tinkering and playing with the thing, it came to life, and I kind of made it work a little bit. And slowly and almost even accidentally, I ended up developing this thing to function within our environment and kind of meet our use case. And ultimately, I carried it forward to a successful implementation. And I had no idea what any of that meant, or what I was really doing. It was just, to me, it was fun and it was interesting, and and to make these computers do the things that these people wanted. And it was a challenge, and it was really satisfying to me that I finally got it right. So I started looking at other computer systems, and looking for other ways to make them useful in this place. And eventually, I digitized their grading and their quality control of incoming product, and I interfaced it with those same scales that I mentioned earlier. And this eventually led to a measurable increase in the accuracy and the efficiency of paying growers for their produce. Before I knew it, I was providing dedicated in-house IT support for the business full time during the summers. And then I trained the office staff so that they could support the business in my absence during the school year. So I was 17 years old, and I had some real projects and key results under my belt. And I had no idea at the time. I didn't know what any of this meant or what it would mean to me in my future. No clue. I was doing it because I enjoyed it and because it was fun and interesting to me. So I graduated high school. My summers working for this company came to an end, and I moved on to a vocational school. So I was a bad student. I had unlikely and frankly kind of weird interests. Then I was a good student. And then I worked seasonally at age 15. And none of this was the prescribed path that everybody thinks that they're going to follow, right? The way was not clear for me, but there was a way. So I finished vocational school in 2003, and I was quickly hired by a hospital in central Washington state as a PC technician. And that's just basic support for end users and endpoint computers. And stepping into that role, my education was key. I was well prepared and even over prepared for that role. And I was able to demonstrate my competence right away. And I was willing, but more importantly, I was able to accept any challenge or any new responsibility that they wanted to send my way. And I quickly advanced to an analyst role, and then to an admin role, and then on to senior network administrator, which I do for over a decade. I'd hold that title. But I was still quite young. But before I knew it, I was leading a team of seasoned IT professionals, much my senior in terms of age and experience. And but I was too ignorant to even recognize or even care about that. I was having fun, and we were doing some really cool things. From my perspective, though, nothing was off limits to me, and this would become very important later on. But I would do anything. I'd do everything. I would. There was no "that's not my job" or "I don't know how to do that." I would do it all. And some of the things that I did include tier one support or help desk support. I did data entry. I did custom fabrication for computer equipment. like mounting computers to walls and then ER or on arms or things like that. I did systems administration, network engineering, network security, information security, application support, database administration, interface programming, web development, on and on and on and on. And I never got bored. So that was the good part of that. Um, but you could have called me a jack of all trades and perhaps master of none. But that saying is often used with a negative connotation. But what most people don't realize is that that's only half the saying. The full saying is actually a jack of all trades and master of none is certainly better than a master of one. It was intended to be a compliment. So, as a jack of all trades and a master of none, I went on to do the following. I led a major server virtualization initiative for the hospital and reduced our data center footprint by 85% and enabled high availability and disaster recovery and business continuity for the enterprise. And this involved things like systems and networking and storage architecture and security, and maybe things that were a little outside my role, maybe not necessarily my job. I led a major virtual desktop implementation, one of the largest in the Pacific Northwest at the time, and we virtualized over 5,000 desktops in 3 years. And at the time, this was a new technology. This was not proven, but we made it work. And we made it work to the extent that we reduced our endpoint and computer lifecycle costs by 40%. And that was huge for the business. We spent millions a year on computer lifecycle. And so that was a big impact for the business. I led a major workforce mobilization initiative by providing secure remote access for clinical staff and partner healthcare organizations. And secure access to patient data is no small undertaking. You can just imagine the implications there. But you're also working with doctors and they have to be able to use it. And so, they can be tough customers. But that's just kind of a tiny drop in the bucket of some of the things that I did during my time there. I could have never anticipated the impact that I would make with my nerdy skill set. This was during the time of the Affordable Care Act and all the legislative mandate that came along with that. Many of those mandates involve technology. My team and I led the first successful implementation of a statewide secure health information exchange in Washington State. First one. That was really neat. This hospital was among the first in the nation to achieve what we called meaningful use stage 2, which meant that we'd achieved certain technology milestones related to the Affordable Care Act, and we qualified for millions in federal reimbursements. And this subsidized our technology investments to a huge extent. And that was a direct impact on the bottom line of that business to the tune of millions. That was huge. So I didn't specialize. I was willing to take on any challenge they sent my way. There were some big ones. Frankly, oftentimes I had no idea how I was going to meet those challenges going in. I was great at some things and maybe not so great at others, but I learned so much by just stepping outside of the boundaries of my assigned job duties and being open-minded. And here's some more fun facts about my time at the hospital. I was the 9th employee hired in that IS department. And when I left, there were 79 of us. When I started, IS had an annual budget, both operating and capital expenditure, of $12 million. When I left, our capital budget alone was $90 million. And that was over 60% of the capital budget for the entire enterprise. And that just goes to show you the efficacy of ITIS in healthcare at the time. We made big impacts. We made a difference. During that time at the hospital, we'd acquired and extended our infrastructure to 59 clinics and providers across the region. And I couldn't get that last one to make it a nice round number, but I'll be happy with 59. The hospital was one of the last community-owned independent hospitals and family of services in the nation, one of 5 actually. And the hospital did eventually partner with a larger healthcare conglomerate in the Seattle area, but they've since returned to their independence. And so, that institution was just truly a gem. What a wonderful opportunity and what a wonderful experience. But my education is what got my foot in that door and allowed me to excel. In 2015, I left the hospital and I went to work for the city of Yakima in Central Washington, providing IT support for municipal services, including public safety, which is police and fire, water, refuse, public transit, streets, economic development, and then just general municipal government operation. I'm sure I'm missing a couple of divisions in there somewhere, but but so many new services, so many new things to see and to learn. It was really exciting. We supported over 31 sites and even provided contractual support to surrounding municipalities, surrounding towns and cities that didn't have their own resources to do it. So we contracted them to get it done. We were responsible to provide high availability to critical public safety systems. And you can imagine how important these information systems are to our police and our fire service providers and responders. Very, very important job. We were responsible to provide a solution to deliver on the public records request as part of Washington State's Public Records Act. And I won't bore you with the details of what that is, but it was a very high profile undertaking, very public and very, very visible. We were responsible for recording and publishing city council sessions and for providing a telepresence solution like we're doing now for the meetings for those that couldn't attend in person. You can imagine just how important that is today. We completely overhauled the customer experience for online utilities, including service enrollment, paperless invoicing, online payments. That system was called Kayenta, and I believe it's actually used here in Idaho Falls as well. My time with the city was brief, but so much was accomplished. What an experience and what great people. I had intended to spend much more time with the city. The work that we were doing, it was important and it touched the lives of nearly every resident in that city. So it's very community oriented. And that meant a lot to me. But in 2016, my family was growing and we love Central Washington. We've got a lot of family back there still. There's so many good things about it. But unfortunately, it's not exactly the best place to raise kids. And we were just ready for a change in scenery and some new adventure. And so that's kind of how Bank of Idaho came about. My wife and I had always talked about moving to Idaho someday, and we didn't know it would be on this side of the state, but we're glad it was. We love it here. We really do. And so Bank of Idaho, committed to community. That's our slogan. And I had spent over a decade working for a community hospital and family services. And then I spent a brief period of time working in city government and serving my community there. So committed to community, just what a great fit, right? I started in 2016. I started as a network administrator. And it was a much, much smaller environment than what I was familiar with, right? It was very simple infrastructure, even surprisingly so. You come in with these assumptions that it's a bank and it's all very sophisticated and complicated, but the truth is, it's just like anything else I had dealt with. We're still dealing with private information and information security, very, very heavy emphasis and high priority there. It's still a regulated industry, similar to healthcare, right? We're still dealing with systems that have to be highly available. People need access to their money, of course, always. We're still supporting an important service that touches everyone's lives. We're still supporting a user base that depends on us to deliver them the tools that they need to be able to perform their work to the best of their ability. It was all very familiar, and I fell right in. The simplicity was something of a blank canvas for me to work with, and my experience in much, much larger organizations 100 times the size of the Bank of Idaho, but it gave me the perspective to quickly identify technology opportunities and to leverage technology to make a difference and to create efficiencies. And so the scale was very, very different. And I didn't have the same economy of scale to work with, of course, but the principles and the best practices, they were all still the same thing. So I could very quickly come in and make a very big impact, and that's what we did. We consolidated and modernized our data center, leveraging virtualization technology and reducing the footprint of the data center by 85%. Sounds familiar. We refreshed the entire network infrastructure with enterprise-grade hardware, reducing downtimes to much, much more tolerable levels tolerable for a bank. Some of the best banks out there even. We implemented redundant systems and infrastructure to ensure highly available systems. Again, people need access to their money. We can't have our banking systems going offline, and we don't. We developed disaster recovery and business continuity strategies and the associated systems and infrastructure that go along with that. And again, protecting the business and protecting our customers. We migrated business systems to the cloud, leveraging native HA and DR and BC capabilities of the cloud, all while maintaining best-in-class security. Again, heavy emphasis on the security of our customer information. We started and completed a major workforce mobilization initiative, which incidentally put us in a very strong position during this pandemic and really helped us minimize the business impact, kept everybody moving, kept us helping our customers, very important. And we're just getting started. We're just getting started. We have a lot to do, and we look forward to doing it. So in 2017, I was named interim CIO for Bank of Idaho. And in 2018, I accepted the permanent position. And fast forward to today, with some of the unprecedented challenges that we're being faced with the pandemic and all the unknowns, the things that go along with that, the economy, and when are things going to get back to normal, and minimizing the impact to the business and our customers again, making sure that they don't feel that hit when it comes to banking and financial services. You know, the cyber environment is as hostile as it's ever been, and the threats are everywhere. And banks have a big target painted on them for cyber criminals, but we're on top of it, and we're staying on top of it, and we're staying ahead of it. And yeah, and that's no small thing. And it's just the very nature of this industry that the stakes are high. You know, it's intimidating at times. I mean, I sometimes joke that things were much less stressful during my time at the hospital, right? There, we were dealing with people's lives, and I was okay with that. But here, we're dealing with people's money. I don't know. I kid, but really it's serious business. But you know, but now I own this thing. No matter the challenges, it's my job to own it. I have to own this, and we're doing it. We're doing big things, and we're doing them successfully. But I've done this before, and I'll do this again. This is my world. This is what I do. I have to own it. So that's my story. That's the abridged version of it, at least. That's how I got from there to here. I've done a lot. I've seen a lot. I've learned a lot. I'd like to share with you a couple of maybe what I consider to be some of the most important things that I've learned throughout my career. And the first thing is I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The bad news is there's no easy path. There is no easy way to do this. You're going to have to get after it. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to do things that other people are not willing to do. But that's the good news, is you can distinguish yourself. You can set yourself apart from the crowd by getting after it and being passionate about what it is that you do. By taking on any challenge that presents itself, even if you have no idea how you're going to meet that challenge, you won't believe what you're capable of. And the second thing I've learned is that, and this is relevant to me every single day, is that just because it isn't your fault doesn't mean it isn't your problem. And this kind of goes back to the whole ownership thing and owning everything in your world, right? You know, sometimes the universe just doesn't play nice, and an enterprise software system just doesn't deliver on what it promised to do. Or sometimes you make a mistake and you bring down your entire virtual server cluster and you paralyze the business for a period of time. And I wouldn't know anything about that, but I imagine it's uncomfortable. Or maybe sometimes the rest of your team isn't pulling their weight, or sometimes someone else gets credit for your hard work, or you know, that's not your fault, but it doesn't matter. It's still up to you to pick up the slack and push the enterprise forward. It's still up to you to grab that failed project by the scruff and shake it off and carry it to success. It's up to you to own up to your mistakes and learn from them and teach others how to avoid them. It doesn't matter whose fault it is, the business still needs you. Third, I want you to know and understand that these skills that you acquire throughout your education, your higher education, your experience, your self-training, they are real. And these skills matter. They do. I mentioned that when I started at the hospital, that I was prepared to hit the ground running, and I ran hard and I ran fast. These skills are valuable. And when you're finally ready to start your careers and you're out there, you're looking for that great job, you need to understand that this is a two-way transaction, right? Yes, you need a job, but these companies also need you. They need your skills, and these companies, they compete with one another to buy your skills and your labor. So you're much more valuable than maybe you think you are. So take your education and your experience and your training very, very seriously. It's your toolbox, it's your utility, it's your value, it's everything. And finally, don't leave any advantage on the table. Do it with benevolence, but don't leave any stone unturned here. Care for your mind, care for your body, a sound mind and a sound body. Care for your diet, care for your sleep. I'm guilty of touting just how much I've been able to accomplish on such little sleep, but really that's not a good thing. Do what you have to do, what you must to manage your stress and maintain a quality of life. Be a learner, be a lifelong learner. Those who are interested now will become interesting later. Keep love and cherish your relationships. You never know whose life you might impact or who might impact yours. And be bold, be brave, and just go out there and get after it. And that's it. I appreciate you giving me your time today. It's really been a privilege. I understood that we might have time for some Q&A here, and if that's the case, I'm more than happy to do it. I encourage you to bring questions. But I'll turn it back over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Ryan. I really, really appreciate your speaking, you speaking to our group today. I just wanted to mention that we have typically had speakers who took that very direct path into university. So I very much appreciate, I know a lot of students appreciate the fact that you can bring a different perspective that is still creating an end result that's beneficial to you.
Absolutely.
That's just something I wanted to just put that out there right front because it's refreshing. It looks like Kathy's group might have some questions. They just popped their camera on.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead. Tackled every project that was put in front of you. Did you ever feel underqualified, and did that ever get you in trouble?
I think I missed the first half of that. Would you mind repeating it just one more time?
Because you accept most challenges put in front of you, did you ever feel underqualified, and did that ever get you in trouble?
Oh, yes, always. Probably more often than not. Again, I mentioned that oftentimes I'd go into these things having no clue how I was going to meet it, how I was going to meet that challenge. But that kind of goes back to keeping those relationships, right? Fostering those relationships and building your resources and knowing who your resources are. I've been fortunate enough to work with some great, great teams, and they were never going to let me down. And so if you set that example and you just step up, and you're willing to meet that challenge, your team is going to rally behind you and they're going to help carry you forward, and you're all going to figure it out together. No man is an island, and you're not alone, and you're not going to have to go through it alone. So yeah, it was always intimidating. It was nerve-wracking. There were a lot of late nights and maybe some tears here and there, but we did it together. And yeah, and I found that inevitably you're going to find success. You're going to find your way through it. And so don't be afraid to just step up and take on those new challenges. Thanks for the question. I appreciate that. I'd love to hear more. I'm happy to share.
Just as a reminder, we can also take questions in the chat. So if you're not able to use your microphone, please feel free to put those questions in the chat and I can read them off for you.
Maybe Jennifer mentioned something that maybe I should have emphasized a little bit more. Yeah, my path was not as cookie cutter, was not as clear, was not as straightforward as maybe some others. And maybe I didn't emphasize my education. I did mention that I didn't do well in public schools. I mentioned that I did attend a vocational school, and then I started my career at the hospital, but I did go back and I attended a community college. And so again, it just kind of goes to show you that not everybody's going to take the same route to get there. Don't discount what's proven and what works, because it is the truth. But just be prepared to pivot and adapt and shift if you need to. It could be something where maybe the federal government changes some parameters around student loans, and maybe those aren't available in the same way that they were to you previously. But you got to be adaptable, right? And just because maybe you have to deviate from the path a little bit, that doesn't mean that that you're not eventually going to find that kind of success. So I should have, thank you for bringing that up, Jennifer, and I should put a little bit more emphasis on that. Your education, your skills, your training, certifications, all of these things, they're very real. They really matter. I mean it. I lived it. They do. Other questions? I'd love to hear them.
Ryan, what was one of the first certifications that you thought outside of the vocational school and outside of the community college?
Yeah, so great question. And in fact, this is so relevant to me that, again, it's something that I should have probably put a little bit more emphasis on. When I started at the hospital, outright non-negotiable requirement was an entry level certification, and that was the CompTIA A+ certification. And I know that that kind of gets brushed aside as maybe just a rudimentary or just very, very entry level certification, but it was a requirement for me to get that job. If I didn't have it, my resume would have been thrown into the round file, and I would have never had the opportunity that I had there. But certifications are important, and since then I've gone on to get many, countless. And there's so many of them out there right now that, boy, if you had to just kind of pick an area of interest or an area to focus, well, that could be tough to do. Where I'm focused right now is cloud, Microsoft cloud certifications in particular. But that's just one of a countless number of certifications or areas to focus on. So they do matter. They very well could have been everything to me. That CompTIA A+ certification, as entry level and rudimentary as it is, it made all the difference. Thank you for that question. That's great. See, I've got a couple maybe coming in here on chat here. Offer any field tips to see the work, any field trips to see the work environment. There's I would love to. There's not much to see now at Bank of Idaho. Again, we've consolidated absolutely everything. That if you were to walk into our data center, you'd probably be wondering, where is everything? Well, it's all been virtualized and consolidated down to just a couple of pieces of hardware, and everything else has been moved off to the cloud. So in terms of IT and technology, it's probably a little underwhelming when you walk in and just take a look at it. But again, you kind of, working in banking, you make this assumption that it's all very, very sophisticated and complicated and robust. And really, that's kind of not the case anymore. It's all very, very simple. And it's the same thing that you see in most environments. So, yep, certifications are essential, you bet. Other questions I'd love to share. Q&A is my favorite part of this, and oftentimes I'll kind of rush through my talks just to get to this part of it. So please, anything, nothing's off limits.
What are some things that you would recommend to students that they could work on right now? So what types of projects could they be doing from home that could actually help prepare them for their next step in education?
Oh, sure. And that's such a great point. With the internet and online resources and even free resources. I mean, there are training platforms out there that will cost you absolutely nothing. And they're very much worthwhile taking advantage of. And I'll give you just one quick example, but again, this is one of just countless many. But Microsoft's Virtual Academy, they've recently rebranded it as Microsoft Learn, but it used to be called Virtual Academy. And it's a cloud-based platform, but they literally provide you with absolutely everything that you need to do to go through these courses and do it hands-on. They'll provide you the virtual server environment. They'll provide you this virtual software to use. They'll have you go along and do the programming steps if that's some of the things that you're interested in. If you're talking about cloud engineering, they'll have you build a cloud environment right there. And it's all hands-on, it's all interactive. It's all instructor-led in many cases, pre-recorded, of course, but instructor-led, and it's free. I mean, that's the best part of it. You have so many free resources at your disposal now over the internet that there's no excuse not to take advantage of it. There's paid resources out there too, and oftentimes you get what you pay for. So those paid services, they really do have some real value there, and oftentimes they're very, very reasonably priced. But yeah, I would say really emphasize hands-on. You know, everybody learns different, but I'm one that has to actually do it to really make it practical for me and applicable and retain that. So take advantage of some of these online platforms that allow you to actually sit down and do the things that you're learning. I strongly encourage that, and that's been really helpful to me throughout my career. I spent thousands and thousands of hours on these online training platforms, and they really can make a difference.
Wonderful. It looks like we have a question from NIC, and it's coming from Bob. He said, what is the size and makeup of your IT staff?
Yeah, so you might be surprised again. We're a medium-sized community bank based out of Southeast Idaho, and yes, we have a presence in the Boise market, and we're kind of everywhere. But my staff is very, very lean, and the reason that we can run so lean is because we're leveraging modern technology, we're leveraging automation, we're leveraging the cloud. So where used to need to throw a body at all of these things, man, a lot of it can be automated today. So today I have two what I call central IT staff. And when I say central IT, I mean network administration, systems administration, and help desk support. I have two staff, a dedicated systems administrator, and I have a help desk or tier one support staff. And really our shift in focus has been more toward that line of business IT. So I have two dedicated application specialists to support all of the business systems that we rely on, right? So our credit and lending systems, our mortgage lending systems, trust and wealth management, and our core banking or retail banking tellering type systems, right? I have two dedicated application specialists to support our line of business IT, if you will. So we're a team of five. I'm very hands-on. I do a lot of this work myself. I don't, I tend to lead from the front, right? So if they're involved in a project, I'm right there in the weeds with them, and we're getting it done together. But we're a small team, but we're a powerful team, and we're an expert team. Good question. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're right at time. Ryan, again, I wanted to thank you for joining us today. You kind of came in as a pinch hitter for us today, and I'm so grateful that we were able to have you join us. Just on behalf of everyone here, we just appreciate you being willing to share your story with us.
You bet. Anytime. Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.